Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls. I'm your host, Karen Guilbault, and today's guest is Mindy Scheier, wife, mother of three, and founder of Runway of Dreams and Gamut Management. So I'm super excited to have this interview with you, Mindy, because for those that don't know, we've known Mindy now since 2015.
Yes.
Pretty much since the start. I mean, literally, yes. I emailed you the day you were going on The View, and you got back to me that same day, which was crazy. So it really has been amazing watching you, you know, how much you've grown and how many lives you've touched along the way. So I just think it's exciting. So this first part is going to be more about you and your story with your kids and Oliver. So let's jump in. Tell us a little bit about your journey of having your three amazing kids. Did you have any issues during your pregnancies, or was there at any point in time that something just maybe felt off or different when you were pregnant with Stella versus Oliver, like looking back on it now?
It's a really good question, one that I've definitely pondered during the time to see if I missed anything or, you know, anything like that. But no, I had very easy time getting pregnant with both Stella and Oliver, and even Beau. Everything was, I loved being pregnant. I had good pregnancies. Stella went full term, Oliver went full term, and so did Beau. I would say the only, now in hindsight, of course, first flag was that Oliver was pretty much breech the whole pregnancy. So much so that I opted to do what's called an aversion, where I could, like, I really want to talk to my younger self, be like, what were you thinking? I don't know, for whatever reason, I was adamantly against having a C-section. So I wanted to at least try to have him moved. And it was successful. They were able, and for those of you that are listening that don't know what that is, it is a manipulation outside of the belly to actually move the baby. So it is human beings literally pressing, twisting, really squeezing your belly to try to move the baby in a, you know, position that they could come out vaginally.
Our chiropractor actually does that.
What's that?
Our chiropractor actually does that as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, it's excruciatingly painful, but it did work. And during the process, there is a high-risk doctor that is looking on the sonogram to, you know, help guide them. And during that process, I remember him saying, "Did you know how little the baby is?" And I was like, no, I had, you know, no idea, nor did I think that was relevant at all. But I said, okay, I'm little, Greg's fairly little, maybe we had little babies. Oliver was born 5 pounds. I think he was like 10 and a half ounces. And again, not crazy small, but very peculiar that a teeny tiny baby wouldn't have been able to move well in the belly. That's kind of what, after the fact, you know, they you know, then the doctors then came back and said, you know, that was probably our first sign that he, even as, infant, a fetus,
Right.
wasn't able, didn't have the strength to put himself in the right position.
Wow.
Yeah.
So walk us through what happened after you had Oliver. At what point did you notice something was wrong? How did it progress from there?
Honestly, had Oliver been my first, I don't think I would have been as clued in, so to speak, that something was not right. As even by 3 months, he was not holding up his head. If I put him on tummy time, he would suffocate. He wasn't able to move his head, right to left. He was abnormally floppy. Even when I held him, that he was sitting up in my arms, he would always flop back. And when I brought the attention to my doctor, it was immediately, oh, he has low muscle tone. He probably has hypotonia, nothing to worry about. Let's put him in PT, it'll be fine. And then by 8 months, he completely took a nosedive off of the growth chart. And then it really started feeling like, that motherly instinct, which I cannot express enough to your listeners, is so true and so real and very difficult, because when you have doctors saying, he's just a late bloomer, he's just, needs time to gain weight, he has low tone, and I just knew that wasn't it. I just knew. And I am grateful that I did listen to myself and kept pushing and pushing. I am also very fortunate that my dad is a doctor, my brother's doctor. We are very surrounded by doctors, and they also were like, no, this is not feeling right. So that's when we went down to Children's Hospital and started in Philadelphia, and started having him evaluated down there. But even with the amazement of the doctors at Children's Hospital, Oliver was not diagnosed for 4 years after that. He went through boatloads of tests, everything from cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, mitochondrial myopathy. We were headed in a gazillion different directions. And I will say, Karen, in this almost 18-year journey, that was probably the hardest time of the not knowing, not having any direction. That was the time that I did get pregnant with Beau. So we were terrified that we didn't know what was wrong with Oliver. I begged Greg to have a third child. And they, we were, the geneticist was basically like, you're playing roulette. We don't know what he has. We don't know if it's your next child's going to have it. It's good that you have Stella, my oldest, that is completely, genetically fine. But it's a risk, and one that we took. And it was actually the week that I had my CVS for Beau that we found out that Oliver had muscular dystrophy, and they were able to extract from the CVS and test both simultaneously. So that was an emotionally charged week for sure.
Wow, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. In your journey, you can imagine all these ups and downs.
Oh my gosh. And at what age, how much support did you get from like friends and family as you were like going through this? Like,
incredible. I say all the time, the support is what gets you through. It absolutely is. In just, even though nobody could say anything that was going to make it better, just knowing that I had people that would sit and just cry, offer a space for me to just cry, or have a pity party and say, why us? Why my child, our child? this was Oliver was also the first boy that was born in both of our families. So it was really an exciting, next chapter. And then this was all going on, and it just kind of took away from that. And I do think it also, and I am sure you can empathize with this, I feel like I missed out a lot of Stella's life at that time, because we were running around the country, going to different doctors. He had tests all the time. And I just wasn't even emotionally there for Stella. I was so devastated over not knowing what was wrong with Oliver that I definitely feel like that was a stage in her life that was missed.
I think that's another reason why I'm really interviewing siblings. I wish that my son was here. He's in the Army, stationed in Colorado, because I really want him to do some of the interviews with the siblings, because he can relate to that, and it's interesting, some of the things that you hear from them, but it really truly makes them better people inside and out, and be more empathetic, have patience. Yeah, I don't think that there's enough out there or supports for siblings. Because sometimes they don't want to go to their parents because they know that they already have enough going on. They don't want to burden them with more stuff when they're thinking about their sibling who has a disability. So it's definitely important to acknowledge them. And I just wish that there was more support for siblings. And I was actually doing an interview with Alex Barone about the No Limits camp. And that actually, they have a camp that has not only the individuals with the limb differences, but their parents and siblings. I'm like, how cool is that? Because it's unheard of hearing camps that actually have your siblings, because they feel left out kind of too.
Absolutely.
So then they're meeting people that are going through the same thing and can support and connect with one another. So there definitely needs to be more of that, I think. So at what age did Oliver walk? I know, and also too, I know he had to wear a helmet. So if you could explain to the folks why he had to wear one, how often did he have to wear it? And did you ever have to con or bribe him to keep it on?
Oh my God, please, Karen, I still con and bribe him to do anything that would help him still to this day.
I think it gets worse as they get older.
No question about it. He never crawled, missed that whole stage, and really didn't start even being ambulatory until 2. And that was, when I say ambulatory, that's really that's generous to say. It was more scaling walls, walking with like that like the cart, that little cart, or the like toys, really more. I would say really wasn't walking on his own until he was 3. And then because he has absolutely no reflexes, when he would fall, it would be a like nesty plunge. Like there was nothing else to break his fall than his head. And he on a regular basis would have these huge eggs on his head, like in the front of his head always, because that's where he would fall, face forward. And that's when he had to start wearing a helmet. The doctors were like, absolutely, he cannot continue like this, hitting his head to that level. And it's when your brain isn't even really
fully developed
at that stage. So he did have to wear a helmet, and it was a horrible fight. It's really tough to get.
Do you have any, what tips would you have for others that have their kids having to deal with that?
I would say you just got to keep going. Even though how difficult it is and how hard it is, and to see your baby so upset and irritated or embarrassed, which was a little bit more of what was happening with him. You just got to keep going until you break them. And thankfully I did, but it was, there's a million things I could point to for that also. Is he wears a BiPAP machine every night, and he had to start utilizing that at 6 years old to get a kid to wear a mask on their face and sleep was nearly impossible. But it was a constant battle that you have to gear up for, and just know that even if you get 30 minutes more a night than they were doing the night before, or whatever the case may be, or he wears the helmet an hour more than he did, it is all good. And just know that it's what your child needs. No different than trying to get them to eat vegetables or drink their milk, or yes, this is much more difficult and painful, but it is to the benefit of your child. And look, some days are easier than others. And there were definitely some days where I was exhausted from it and didn't have the energy to fight. And some days you just have to take a day off and just say, we'll get back to it tomorrow. And your kids need that day off of that constant, you have to. I think that's really important to know when everybody needs to break. You yourself need a break. They need a break.
Absolutely. And then what about the feeding tube? How long did he have to wear the feeding tube for? And then did you have a lot of issues? Was he successful with trying to pull it out, or?
He had an NG tube for about a year when he was like 3-ish. I would say from 3 to 4. And then when they assessed that it was something that needed to be more permanent, he got a G tube. And he had that from about age 4 to 9 or 10. When he was more mature, more understanding, had a better understanding of how much he needed to eat during the day. We were able to supplement him drinking shakes, rather than at those, earlier years, it was just impossible to get enough calories in him that he needed.
Right.
And the only way to do that was to have him eat like literally 24 hours a day. So he would eat typical food by the mouth during the day, and then at night he would have like full feedings while he was sleeping.
How often do they change the tubes, the NG tubes? And do you have to
NG is easy. Oh, the NG is, I'm sorry, I went to J tube. It's really hideous, if I can be honest. It's really a very difficult process that they train the parents to do, or the caregivers. I would have much preferred the doctors doing it.
Yeah.
But it was something that Greg and I had to be trained to learn how to change out.
How often did you have to change it?
I think it was once a month. Maybe it was a little less. But it was a grueling night that we would, that was and I don't certainly want to, scare anybody out there that has your kids have NG tubes, because we did it. You can do it. Yeah. It's just tough.
It's different when it's your own kid and you have to do it. You got to do it. Right.
And nobody wants to hear their kid cry that level of agony.
Right.
That it was, but it was quick. Like once we knew what we were doing, it was fairly quick. But tough, like other parts of life. It was tough. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did it make you feel going out in public? Because I remember reading one of the stories too of an interview you did. You're out with your gorgeous little boy, and he's wearing a helmet or has a feeding tube. And did you have a lot of people staring? And how did that make you feel? And what did you do? Did you just keep walking? Did you give him that stare?
Great question.
Did you did you have people come up and ask you? There was one time we were with Faith after she had her surgery back when she was 3 years old, and for her muscle lengthenings, and we were out, and she was still little enough, so she was in her stroller versus a wheelchair. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did she break both of her legs? So we had like people asking, then I had to say, well, she didn't really break them, yada, yada. So how did you handle it?
In the beginning, it was really hard. It definitely was having, at one point he had the tube on his face, wearing a helmet. And I do remember one situation that he was at a birthday party. Like I definitely was still, I still always felt very strongly of giving him as typical a life as possible. He was invited to a birthday party. We were going to the birthday party. And I didn't know a lot of the moms that were there. And the it was a combination, I think, of the staring and his inability to do whatever activity that the birthday party had. Of course, I think it was like a sports party or something that, I probably wasn't thinking it through. This was also new to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. And probably in hindsight, the fact that I didn't know a lot of people there, and it was a sports focused party that he couldn't really walk that well. And it was a colossal mess. The one mother that I did know there, I asked her to just watch Oliver for a second. And I remember going into the bathroom, closing the stall and crying my eyeballs out, like having a full blown breakdown of what did I do? How am I getting through this? I don't think I'm strong enough. All these things that I can have empathy now looking back at that it feels like fairly normal. There, as there's no rule books on this. There's nobody I could, nothing I could draw upon from my experience with Stella to help me through this. And on top of trying to mother, your heart is also breaking and you're terrified and you're worried and you don't know what the future holds and you're trying to just hold it all together. And that was definitely a time that I didn't do a great job holding it together.
Yeah. I remember going to a birthday party, and one of our friends that we went to school with, she had cystic fibrosis, and her mother let her sleep over her one best friend's house, the only one. And I remember her having to have all of her machines and her oxygen and the thing that would, pump her chest. And I remember all of that. And I remember all the medicines she used to have to take. Yeah. At what age did he start like noticing, that he was, different from everybody? And like, how was,
I would say we had a really good run of all the way through elementary school. He definitely was. I mean, we always were very open and, obviously, based on what I do for a living, was very public about him. We spoke very openly in the house, but it was a lot easier to call his mask at night like his ninja uniform or whatever we made it into. This is what superheroes wear, Oliver, and that's why you needed to get stronger. Once that all kind of fades away, I would say he was even fairly good in middle school. It was really high school. And unfortunately, COVID hit right in the middle of freshman year of high school for him. So he really, it did not serve him well. Like the inactivity, he definitely took a bit of a nosedive during COVID in terms of his capabilities. Absolutely decreased from going nowhere, doing nothing, no PT, nothing, even on the rare times I got him to get out of the house to walk around the block or whatever it is, the fact that his life became, and all of our kids' lives, obviously, became wake up, go from your bed to your desk, go from your desk to your bed.
And kids like ours with the physical disabilities, it's so important for them to do those exercises.
Him walking around the high school was an activity. I mean, it was an amazing, thing because his high school happens to be enormous. So it was in a way very good for him. And not having that was it was detrimental to his body. So I would say the peak of him, it all coming to a head of, holy cow, my body is breaking down. Is this going to be my life? It all kind of came to a head when he went back to school. And so really about the beginning of junior year.
And
that's really when I would say the train hit the wall.
So he has a rare form of muscular dystrophy. Can you explain to the listeners what muscular dystrophy is, for those that might not know, and how his is?
Sure. So his is actually called rigid spine muscular dystrophy. And it is extremely rare, as you mentioned. I think he's one of 70 cases in the world.
Wow.
So they know very, very little about this strain of muscular dystrophy. We're extremely lucky that they even found it. And so muscular dystrophy by definition is a degenerative neuromuscular disease. So your muscles lose capacity and break down over the course of your life. For Oliver, his form of it really resides in his pulmonary system, his muscular system, and his spinal cord. So rigid spine, as it was named that way, because your spine auto fuses over the early part of your life. So really by the age of 12-ish, right before you go into puberty, is what they do know of rigid spine is that is the time period that your spine will fuse. It will be a solid bone. It will no longer bend. So however, the challenge of that is that is not the end of the world by any means.
Right.
But with his type of muscular dystrophy, it also comes with severe scoliosis. So his spine was distorting rapidly and fusing at the same time. And if you don't get to that kind of sweet spot of when you can get a spinal fusion, he would be permanently in a really awkward shape so his curve was at its worst, like about 50 degrees, and a true S.
Wow.
So there was like that one window of, he had growing rods for a while.
I remember that.
Could expand because he was still growing. So generally, spine surgeons that deal with neuromuscular diseases don't want to do a full spinal fusion until they are really almost done growing, or their torso is almost done growing.
Right.
So it's like that race to the finish of figuring out when they could keep the rods of him growing and when they can remove those and put in a full spinal fusion. So he had that couple of years ago. I think he had this full spinal fusion when he was 15. And he still has a curve, but it is significantly better. And he is, has the fusion from top to bottom.
Yeah, just watching him in the videos at the runway shows online, you could tell how much straighter, straighter he is.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So I know, it's hard on families having children with special needs, obviously. Did you and did both you and Greg work full time during all of this, or were you able to take leave, or, and then because then you had Bo in the mix as well too.
Yeah.
So Stella,
So that was
Oliver,
the
and Bo.
fun part, that I was a new mom, during kind of the thick of this. I now had 3 kids. And I did work, we both worked full time. I had the period of time, which I know we'll talk about in a bit, of starting Runway of Dreams, that I sold the company that I had started, and kind of took a year to build Runway of Dreams. But even during that time, it was really still full time to build a company. So I never not worked, but I definitely knew that I had to own my own business in order to make this work, that I needed to work my schedule around my kids' needs, and particularly Oliver.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we covered most of that. Oh, how many surgeries all in all did he have? That was the other thing.
He had 2 spinal surgeries. He had many muscle biopsies. He had tonsils and adenoids out proactively to see if that would help his breathing. He obviously had G-tube surgery, and other things that he was just in and out of the hospital just from, getting pneumonia, which he is very susceptible to, things like that. So we're fairly frequent flyers. But we're not afraid of a hospital room or a cafeteria.
Right. And is he, how many more surgeries is he expected to have? Do they, or
they don't know. There's some things that, like, he may have to have some other procedures done on his spine. He may have to have, his ankle cords are also fusing. He might have to have something there, but we kind of go with what they say. We try not to live in the, oh, this may happen or that may happen, just trying to stay ahead of it.
Yeah. And then before we wrap up too, what about so one, you're both working, you're juggling the kids around, all of that kind of stuff, all while trying to keep your marriage together and alive. And they always say that it's
another fun topic,
right? They always say that, it either makes you or break you, it's going to either make you or it's going to break you. And I can truly say it really has made Jesse and I that much stronger. And we had our ups and downs. How was your marriage, and what advice would you give to young parents that are going through this, like, to stick it out like we have,
Yeah, it is a very, very important topic. As I believe it is the number one reason for divorce, is the either the death of a child or a child with a disability. Because, and this kind of will roll into my advice, is everybody deals with this very differently. Greg and I, my husband, deal with Oliver very differently. And in the beginning, it was hard. I would get really angry if he wasn't as devastated as I was, or wasn't, crying his eyeballs out the way that I was. That doesn't mean that he didn't feel as much as I did. He just processes it differently
and holds back.
And I really had to come to terms with that he is just not somebody that is going to worry in advance about something that we don't know if it's going to happen. I am working on it, but it's hard not to unhear something that a doctor said that could happen, or this is why we want you to do this so that this doesn't happen. That's hard for me to get out of my head. Greg is very good at compartmentalizing that and saying, we don't need to worry about that until it happens. That was very frustrating for me. And I would say the other part that's really tough is in many cases, and certainly with Greg and I, he's a dentist. It is not as easy it's actually nearly impossible
For him to
for
take
him
off.
to take Oliver to his doctor's appointments. It's
Appointments.
just not possible. Many times they have to pivot or shift, or I need to bring him down, not when I thought I needed to.
Mhm.
And all of it falls on my shoulders.
Mhm.
And that can be really tough at times to bear all of that weight.
Yeah.
But having an understanding of what each of you can bring to the table to help and take part of the care of the child, that is something that I would say was our down in our marriage, that I was taking the brunt and not communicating well enough when I needed help, when I needed to just unload, even if he was just there for me to unload and say, I am falling apart. I can't handle this all. I would rather retract and not touch into that because it was emotionally difficult for me to rehash what a doctor said in the appointment, or so I internalized it rather than sharing it with him. So from his perspective, all went well. Mindy didn't tell me anything. Mindy's got it because she didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And so that's another, I would say, just to kind of sum that up, everybody needs a job. Whether within the confines of what each of the parents have the capacity to do, it can't fall on one parent to do. And communication is so key to the success of the marriage with this piece of it. And we're working on it. I can honestly say we are in therapy for this specifically, of dealing with communication about Oliver and how we do it better. But it is, thankfully, we are 23 and a half years in, and I don't think we're going anywhere. I think if we can get through all of this, we're going to make it. But it is absolutely no walk in the park by any stretch.
Yeah, it is. It is very hard. I think what got me through is like seeing some of my friends where their husbands would not do half of what Jesse would do, as they say. But then again, you never know until it happens to you and it's put in your hands, because you don't know what you're capable of doing until you have it in front of you to do. So, he has always helped and has always been hands-on. And like, if I need a break, I'm like, okay, I'm going to Jersey. Like, that was like my saving grace. I'm going away for the weekend. You got her, I'm going. And I would go to New Jersey for a night or two to hang out with my friends. And I would do that like every couple months, at least 4 times a year. It's been a while because now, I'm getting older and I just don't have time to go up. But at those times I was grateful that he would step up to the plate and help, because he knew if not, I was walking out the door. Sorry, because I can't do it. I can't do it all. I need a break. I need to go away. I need my respite time.
It's
it's it's harder, and it's harder too, because now JD is away, and Faith is now in residential 3 days a week. So it was like, oh my gosh, it's like the house is quiet. There's no kids. Are we going to empty nest? It's like we're like relearning each other and getting to know each other again, because everything is always surrounded with what needs to be done for Faith and what time and where.
No question.
So it is. It's hard. It definitely is hard. Okay, so I want to ask you one more question, and then we're going to wrap this up. And then we're going to go into Gamut and Runway of Dreams. So the one question is words. Words are very powerful. I hand stamp them on tokens, meaningful words, something that could be a daily reminder for you. What word would you choose for you personally, not for Gamut or Runway of Dreams, but that resonates with you as a mom and just all that you've gone through? And why? Why would you choose that word?
To describe myself?
A word that's meaningful to you, but personally, not on because we're going to do one for Gamut and Runway of Dreams. So something for you.
I would say I have never had a bigger appreciation for the word grateful than I do from everything from having Oliver to being exposed to this world that I didn't even know existed. I mean, I used to say, we were fortunate that we didn't have anybody in our family that had a disability. And I retract that now because I actually think that we weren't fortunate to not be exposed to the incredibly amazing, rich, positive, true, vision of life and what is important and what isn't.
Yes.
Is a form of gratitude that I didn't necessarily know existed, that I really, really feel lucky. I feel so lucky that I get to be Oliver's mom and that he opened this tremendous world to us to me, to my family,
and to the world.
every part of it.
Yeah. Ooh, gives me chills. All right. Okay. So we are going to wrap things up and stay tuned because we are going to be back with Mindy to go over Runway of Dreams and Gamut and talk about that and how her world changed right at her kitchen table. So thanks, Mindy. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.